So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at Wilderness War. This is another of our faction function videos. Today we're talking a little bit more in depth about the British in Wilderness War. So if you've watched the French one, you kind of know the kind of format we're looking at. We're just talking broadly about maybe some strategies, things to look out for, and a couple of different ways to kind of launch yourself forward and prosecute the French and Indian War. So Wilderness War is a 2001 title from GMT Games, designed by Volker Runke. This is an outstanding game, although there's a lot of nuance to it. It's a CDG, so it's difficult to kind of put out any authoritative strategy guides or anything like that because you're at the mercy of the cards that you draw. But we'll take a look at a hand of cards and kind of maybe see what we're looking to do with some of those, as well as some of the options that you have, things to look for, and maybe a couple pitfalls as the British that you might kind of fall into. So without further ado, if you haven't watched the French one, go and watch that as well, because that might give you an indication about that side, because they are very different. I cannot stress enough just how asymmetric these two factions are in this game. So you'll hear me reference some of the things that the French are going to do. If you want more detail about that, go watch that video. But it's partly because you have to understand the kinds of things that your opponent is looking to do as you try to be proactive in this game as well. But we have the game set up. This is the early season in the full campaign, so it's 1755. So there's a number of events that need to happen and things that will happen kind of chronologically, so to speak, as the course of the war goes on. But let's just kind of deal ourselves 8 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and kind of take a look at what we've got, and maybe what to look for when assessing a hand as you start the game. So I'm a person, generally speaking, like to organize my hand into the different types of cards. Before we look at any of the cards specifically, let's look in general. So it's a traditional CDG in that you have an ops value and you have events on each of the card. However, this is one of those CDGs where even if you play a French card, the blue ones, for the ops, you do not trigger the event on them. So it's not like you're hurting yourself in this one. These are effectively just a 2 and a 3, and these are blank for the purposes of this. Now, so when you have a whole hand of blue cards as the British, it's not a terrifying prospect. It actually frees you to do just all of the ops. It's actually not a bad thing at times. When you're holding opponents' cards, what that really does is it just stops them from having access to some of those events. Some of that can be very strong, some of it can just be like, okay, not that big a deal. But things like this Louisburg squadrons, play if you control Louisburg. We don't, but the French does. The French would play this and they would say no amphibious landings this year. So the entirety of both seasons of 1755, we would not be able to launch an amphibious assault from Halifax to Louisburg. That's something they could play on us, but because we hold it, great. And then on a 1 through 3, you would remove it if you played it. No French naval moves ever, and British may now play a Quiberon card, which you basically lock up all of your boats in Louisburg to protect and be aggressive, but they sacrifice their navy doing it. So, having this stops the enemy from playing it, but, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they played it at this early point of the game. We have intrigues against Shirley. We would eliminate Shirley. Shirley is one of our leaders, and he is... Where is he? Is he on the board, or is he in our pool? Let me just double check. He is... Monk Johnson, Shirley, he's this guy. He's this 2/6 guy. So the 2 is the card cost to activate him. You have to play a 2 or a 3 to activate this guy. And he has a little 6. That 6 means that he can carry 6 guys with him. This card simply kills him. It doesn't kill him, it eliminates him because he was relieved, basically. We have these neutral cards that show the red and blue. Either side could play these. Call out militias means that we're going to put colonial militias out, which help to defend against raiders and things like that. That's not terrible. Victories in Germany is a very strong 3-powered card that allows naval moves. But the real power is that you roll a die and you restore that many reduced units, regulars, to full. We don't have a ton of regulars on the board, but if we did and we had reduced a bunch doing combats, this is really strong to flip them back over to full side. And I say that because you have a stack of units here, you have a couple units here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Units come at a premium. You have to place regulars in your ports and move them up. This is one of like the only 2 cards that can restore units in the game. Units are at a premium, strength points are at a premium in this game, so it's unfortunate almost that we have this that early, but maybe it will prompt us to be aggressive with other things, because we do have some regulars, so that we can then make use of this, for example. Or that's unfortunate that we have that. So, we then have colonial recruits. Roll a die and restore that number of... Courier are the French irregulars. Rangers are British irregulars. We don't have any. Light infantry, we don't have any of those on the board either. Or provincials. Provincials are these green drilled units. We have a bunch on the board. There's, I think, 4 or 5 in this stack. 1 here, 2 here, but none of them are damaged. So we have a lot of cards that would be good later on in the game, but there you go. We have Courier Intercepted. You're going to play this on a roll of 3 through 6. You draw a card from your opponent's hand and place it in your own. If you roll a 3 through 6, this is very strong. You have to give up a lot for it, but if you give up a lot and you roll a 1 or a 2, it feels real bad. So sometimes you're desperate, but this can be very strong. British regulars. So I think there's four or 5 of these in the game. So there's only a fixed amount of guys you can get on the board. You can place 3 regular units and a leader at any ports. Your leaders are in like a little pool. You're going to draw one of these randomly. And you're going to put them anywhere with an anchor symbol. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So you're going to put them here. Then you're going to spend a bunch to kind of move them on. So there's a lot of logistics in this game, but this gets removed. So this 3 naval move card is gone from the game when you do that. So you can only use a certain number of these. The last card that we have, which is very good, is William Pitt. This was very fortuitous that we drew this. So William Pitt, it implements the global strategy in like the war against the French, basically. And what it does is it unlocks Highlanders, Amherst, Forbes. So Highlanders, all the Highlander cards, there's I think 3 of them in the game, maybe 4, become able to be played. Amherst, Forbes, and Wolfe, which are 3 little leaders, they are all pretty decent, get added to your pool of leaders that you can draw, so you get better leadership potential. And then you're going to draw anyone Highlanders, British regulars, light infantry, or troop transport from the discard. And then starting next season, we're going to start drawing 9 cards the rest of the game. This is very strong early on, but we want to play this later in our turn, because hopefully the French will have discarded one of these cool cards, we can pick it up. That maximizes all the uses that we can get out of this card. Then it's removed. But having this early unlocks all of our Highlanders, which is really nice, and it gives us those extra leaders, potentially, that we can draw early, so that's really nice. We're actually quite lucky to have that. But we're going to look to play this towards the end of our turn in the hopes that the French will ditch one of our regulars, or a light infantry, or a troop transport, or Highlanders from their hand in the course of their turn. Because we can't get this one back, because we're going to play it for this, and then it will be removed. Or we could play this for the ops, that this is strong ops, do some stuff with it, it's in the discard, then we can fish it back out and reuse it, and then place regulars. That's an option that you have if things aren't going well. But suffice to say, William Pitt's going to be a later turn card for us. So, all that being said, things to look for that we might try to do. Because in this game, the British function more as a conventional army. The French army have a much smaller, like standing drilled troops, but they have a significant number of these circular counters You got a bunch of them in here as well. A bunch of them up here. And they're going to keep recruiting those kinds of units. They're going to have a ton of irregulars, and they're going to be doing lots of raiding and little skirmishes. They're going to play the ambush card a million times on you in this game. They're going to be trying to cut your supply lines so that you can't kind of reinforce this guy or siege beyond there. So that's kind of what they're looking to do. You have a couple of irregular troops to start the game, these Mohawk tribes. You might be able to pick up more of these grey neutral ones if you can get them on your side. There's a couple of irregular ranger units you might be able to put out, but again, you have to have the cards to be able to play those out. But more generally speaking, you have access to a lot more regular troops. A bunch of them are these kind of 2-4, not particularly strong, but serviceable provincials. You've got northern department ones, which kind of go up here. I don't know if you can kind of see, that's kind of a dark green. And you have these light green southern provincials. You don't have as many southerns, you've got many more northern ones. And then again, you have many more of those British regulars. So I showed this in the last one, but for reference, this is the little pool of sad French units left. They have access to some of these, sure, but we have reams and reams of British Highlanders and regular troops, light infantry. The Royal American troops are extremely good if you can get that card going. You just have to bring them all out on the board, give them leaders, and kind of go out and prosecute the war in a more measured and methodical, but again, conventional way. You're going to be doing some kind of raiding and skirmishing where possible, but you are more of like this grinding powerhouse that is very difficult for the French to stop in any conventional sense. So, looking at our little hand of cards, I think what we might try to do early on is something like calling out militias, potentially. Because what militias are going to do is we're going to put a militia counter down here. So we have our little colonial militia. And you can put him, he's only a little 1-strength guy, but you put him in one of these holding boxes. And you can either do it in the southern one or the northern one. That's fine. Once you get a second one in, any time that the French try to raid anywhere in this northern department, they're going to have a -1 on their die roll, which is very strong. In my opinion, it's better to, if you stack militias in the south, this is a much broader frontier, and there's many more irregulars. I feel like I get raided in this southern department more often early in the game. If I was trying to kind of go for this militia strategy, that would be kind of where I place those. But as you like take some of this ground and you the French player doesn't have access to those irregulars anymore, you might move them over here so that if you start getting raided on this way, you know, you can start putting them in the northern militia boxes, but you'll be able to kind of engage that. Other things that we're going to do is the British set the tone of the game, and if they're not setting the tone of the game, things are going to probably go quite poorly for you. If you can get the French on the back foot, that's where you start getting that steamroller going. Now, we got this big old stack of troops over here, and we have a little but not insignificant stack of troops down here. So the first few things that I am looking to do is I am going to try my best to pin this stack of units. So regularly what I will do, typically I'll leave Dunbar behind because he's a 3 value leader, and that means I can only activate him with a 3 card. That's crippling, basically. But we have Braddock down here. He can carry 7 units of that little superscript, and he's got 2, so we can activate him with a 2 or a 3 card, which is better, and he's sat on top of these 2 regulars. Can you even see that? Yeah, okay. So typically I'm going to, early on in the game, is move him up here to Wills Creek to stack with these 2 provincials that I've got there. And why that's important is if the French start to come and raid, they have to stop in mountains. And so typically you'll see them try to stage in this area because this is too far. And if they go all the way around here, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But that's, that's their prerogative. If they send a bunch of guys over here, you could start waltzing in here because it's unprotected. If they send a couple guys into these mountains, you can then react to that and go and try and attack them if you wish. But regularly I'll move up here, and then on subsequent turns I will move them into this mountain, and then I will try to build a stockade there. And the stockades are important because they're going to give you supply over this mountain. And then we're going to move down here. So that's kind of what I try to do early on in a game down in this region. Because even these guys sat here means that it is much less likely they're going to be raiding with that stack of units. You might get into some combats. They might try to kind of infiltrate and circumvent you. That's fine. But this is a significant threat, because if they start moving guys out to try and do raids elsewhere, well, you can just waltz into Ohio Forks, which is worth an additional VP, siege it, and all of a sudden you threaten, and you're going to go and sit on all of these, which means they don't have those native allies that they can gain, and it's a much easier path to walk up here to Niagara. So just moving up there, the threat of it itself will cause your opponent to have pause on what they do, and then you can react a bit better and a bit stronger to what they've got going on there. So that's something that I will typically try to do. And if they start doing little raids here and there, you can build stockades in these areas, and that's going to give them a negative on their raiding die roll, because they're going to be trying to raid you constantly. Another thing that I'm looking to do, and this is where you start getting into options that are open to you, is looking at you have a forking path here, basically. You could attempt to try and build this all on its own, but you don't have a lot of troops to do that early on. So you can either move a bunch of guys up here into Hudson Carry South, and then start threatening moving up here, building some stockades along here. You've got supply to there anyway. But if you can build some stockades this way, you're all of a sudden threatening the Fort Crown Point, and that's going to force the opponent to swing some of their troops down here. They're going to swing their troops down here, and you're going to end up in some combats. The reality is you don't have that much power here, and if they bring everyone down here, the French has a very strong standing army as well. It's pretty even, which is not great. You don't want to be rolling at even odds in this game. At least not where you can help it. So, you could bring the whole stack. If you brought Johnson and Shirley, you can bring along these 2 Mohawk units, which you could do. You would only do that if you had, in my opinion, if you had an ambush card, and we don't. Ambush cards can be played if you have a larger number of irregulars than the opponent, and the opponent is not in a fort. Well, they might be in a fort, but if we can catch them in the wilderness and we can ambush them, you inflict all of your hits, and then they take their hits, then they calculate their strength, then they attack you back. So it can be very powerful as a way to swing combat. So generally, unless I've got that, and I'm going real hard this way, I typically don't bring everyone. And part of that is that they're going to swing this stack down, and potentially this stack as well. And you can't ambush someone who's got more irregulars than you. Now, this is a huge concentration of force for the French, and they can't maintain that. But, they could wipe you out and then kind of go home, and that would be very bad for you. So, things that I might look to do is I might take Johnson with maybe 1 regular and a couple of my Mohawks, because he can carry 3 units. He's a 1 leader, so it's easy to activate, and he has a +1 command bonus, which is nice. So he can drag 3 units, and I'm going to go up this river this way to reinforce Oswego. Sometimes I will drop off 1 unit here. And I'll do that because if these raiders or these raiders over here decide to come down and try to cut my supply lines, I have the chance, this guy can pick up a guy and intercept into this space, and this guy can block this space or try to intercept into this one if he needs to, but he could also intercept into these ones, but they'll have to stop on the mountains, so you have time to react to that. So typically that's what I'll do. This is also good because there is a card that activates these grey neutral allies. You have to have Johnson and forts in this chain here. So he's well placed to, if you draw that card, which we didn't play that, to get a bunch more allies, and then you can send your guys off raiding, and then the French are having a taste of their own medicine at that point. So I'm typically trying to move some guys over there, and then potentially from here, I'm going to start moving these guys out. And I am almost always going to bring everyone. I'm going to drop one off here, and then I'm going to move to Hudson Carry North. And on a subsequent turn, I'm then going to start using cards to... I'm not going to play this for this. So I might start then building stockades. So building stockades costs 1 per stockade. So, and you can't build 2 turns in a row. That's important for fort building more than anything. So I'm going to build 1 stockade here into this area here. So we now have supply going in there. And I'm also going to, I'm trying to protect myself by building a couple on the frontier over here. Just in case these raiders start going on. I didn't go any further. You can only build stockades where you have drilled troops, which are the square ones. Oh, did I go over here? Oh, let's say I could build one there if I'd spent... Because I move, build, move. So that's like 4 turns to be able to get there and do all that. After I moved up, so that's 5 turns, really. But yeah, using those, positioning yourself and then doing a bunch of builds, that's important. Why is that really important? Well... Let's say this army had come down here and was sat in this space. If my stack moves in and attacks his stack, and I lose and have to retreat, if I'm attacking into a wilderness space, and I have to retreat, if the retreating space does not have a stockade, a fort, or is a cultivated space, like I was attacking into there, then everyone dies, which is very, very, very bad. And I said it in the other video, I have played games where I have killed this stack of units, and like this stack of units attacking in here, and everyone died, and I had like 2 units on the board, 6 leaders, and I was like, I have to concede, because you can't build the troops fast enough. You're at the mercy of your cards, if you even get any regular troops to put on, and that's the point at which these stacks will come down. They'll take all of these points, they'll siege Albany, and they will carve up your territory, and you'll be in a hole and you're going to lose the game. So I say that to emphasize, this is a slow game. You cannot rush this game. You cannot blitzkrieg. Think about what they were doing. They were walking in these mountains and in these forests. At best, they would have some pack mules and wagons. You can't rush this. If you set up a camp and then you go and do an attack and you get driven back miles and miles and miles, you get harried the whole way and your force is destroyed because there's nowhere for you to go where you can escape. So do not fall into that early kind of pit trap, basically. This is not a rushing game. This is a measured game. I cannot stress that enough. So we'll put these guys back in Quebec. On a subsequent turn, I'm going to move out. I'm going to build another stockade. Okay. Think about how the game starts you with this line of stockades and a fort going up this river. The river can give you supply anyway, but that's what you get through this. But you're trying to construct this kind of a thing going this way up to Montreal. If you wanted to kind of, if you get a bunch of other troops and you want to go up this way to open up another front, you can do that. If you're going up this way, look at this line of forts and stockades down here. Is the British, you're trying to take all of that back. The game state shows you how you're supposed to prosecute this kind of thing. Do not ignore what the game is telling you. That's kind of the big number one thing. The other decisions that you have is how hard you want to commit to Halifax. So you cannot make this move unless you have a amphibious naval move card. And so to do that, you need to play a 3 card, and you have to have the very explicit, and now I'm not going to be able to find it, amphibious assault card. There's like 3 of them in this game, and of course I can find none of them. How classic. Amphibious landing, there it is. And basically, you activate this stack of guys to move. They can activate a naval move, and it says the unit may land in a French-occupied or controlled space. Place amphib marker. And you can only go along these red lines. So you're going to go doo-doot. Now, you can't siege Louisbourg with one guy. You're going to die and lose. So, this is where you start getting into commitment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play my little British regulars into the discard pile for the 3 ops. I'm going to move some guys. I'm going to build some things. This goes into the discard. Then on my subsequent turn, I'm going to play William Pitt, who unlocks all these new cool leaders. They go in here. They allow me to play Highlanders in the future. And then I can go fishing for this British regulars that I put in the discard. And that comes back into my hand. Now I'm going to play British regulars on a subsequent turn for the event, where I can place 3 regulars and a leader if possible. So I go to the box, and I've got 3 British regulars. I'm going to put them all in Halifax, and I'm going to fish out 1 leader, and that's who we get. We got Abercrombie, which is fine. He's not very good. He's a 3, which is very expensive, and he can carry 7 guys, but it's got no bonuses, so that's a shame. So he's going to sit there. So now all of a sudden I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 regulars and a couple leaders. They have 3 regulars and a leader. If you were feeling gutsy, you could on subsequent turn siege with just that. I might not recommend that though. That's a tough one. So this is where one of your big decisions of the game is how hard are you going to commit to Halifax? Are you going to wait for another card to put in there? So let's say on a subsequent turn, you might pull a Highlanders. You can put 1 4/4 Highland unit and any 1 leader. You can stick it into Halifax. If you get another stack of British regulars, of course, I will not be able to. Here's the big Highlanders card. You get 4 4/4 Highlanders and 2 leaders. If you can get that early as well and stick that with this stack, you're going to have a death stack. You're going to naval move in here. You're going to try to siege Louisbourg, which is tough. And then you're going to take Louisbourg. That's going to give you 3 victory points, which is going to make up for some of the raiding that's been happening to you. These guys are going to be gone, and it's almost impossible for them to be replaced in this game. And now all of a sudden, if you're sitting here with your stack, that leaves Quebec ripe for the picking. This army, which they've been going down here trying to fight you with, as you've moved your conventional land armies, that it's been annoying. When you sit in Louisbourg, they have to pull troops back. Now, the French is probably going to have gotten some regulars at some point, but if you've been able to beat this stack up a little bit, and they're in a similar shape to this, they have to retreat to protect Quebec, because this is another 3 victory points. And if it's open, I'm going to do another naval move with an amphibious assault, if I can get that card, which you will eventually. I'm going to sail right here. I'm going to build a stockade here. And on my next turn, I'm going to walk into Quebec, and I'm going to siege this empty fortress, which is much easier than sieging a fortress with a bunch of troops and a bunch of good leaders in it. And if you can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, this will be opposed. If this is unopposed, the French are just throwing the game away at this point. So this is your other axis of attack, which is going to force the French to have to make some very tough choices. Are they pulling troops back to defend this? How many are they pulling back to defend this? Are they going to throw some of their irregulars over there with the threat of an ambush? Because if they do that, all these guys aren't raiding you. That's good news for us. But I have played games, I will tell you, where I could not draw anything here, and I was losing the ground war, and I was forced to commit really hard to this. And so I was putting all my regulars, all my Highlanders. I sailed my troops from Halifax down to New York, and just did all of this, and I won the game, and I never took Louisbourg. So it is possible to do that. It's challenging, but I have done that. And just to let you know that is possible. If you can do this, this is some great and relatively easy points to put up. But if you make a big death stack and they're making a big death stack, that's a threat that is sucking up their troops, and they do not have many of them. So that's good for you. You can afford to put a few extra guys here, even if it's just to have a standoff with a bigger Louisbourg stack, because that is they can't spare the troops, and you kind of can to an extent at least. Things like up here, I've got this little stack. This is a fairly defensive stack. I don't know how comfortable I would feel moving out with that. It's just a couple little provincials and a unit. But once I start getting those regulars, maybe I put my Highlanders down here. My Highlanders can shoot all the way up here, and I've got this defensive force to protect against raiders coming down this way. And I'm going to move my stack up here. I'm going to build a stockade, and then I'm going to walk. Over here and try to take this. And again, this is a game all about axes of attack. If I can open up this, and I'm kind of here, and this might be even, all of a sudden I got to rush guys down there as the French. And every time they're committing here, they're maybe not committing down here, and I can push down here as well. So all this to say that you set the tone for this, and if you can draw the French heavily in one direction, it is imperative that you punish them for doing so by going the other direction and holding where you are. The other thing that I will mention, I mentioned it in the last video about this, is that winter quarters. At the end of every late season of every year, you have to have your death stacks split up. Okay, so you have to, when you're counting your ops, you have to account for being able to do that. Each stockade and each fort can hold 4 combat units. If you have more than that, all of the drilled troops get reduced, and any reduced troops get killed. So, if you have a big stack of 10 guys out here, oh, I was threatening the French, and you've got 2 of them are reduced and 8 of them are full strength, the 2 reduced guys get killed and all 8 get flipped over. That is very, very, very bad. And if they stay that way for a whole nother year, everyone dies. So don't do that. I have done that before a number of times, and it's awful. And it's very easy to miscount. 1, 2, 3, 4, great. It's very easy to have that 5th guy in there, and you get absolutely hosed. So be very careful about how you build your stacks. That's why if you look, I've got a little stack of 3 guys, a little stack of 4 guys, a little stack of 4 guys. You might have a very scary French stack that looks like this, and I have played many a game where that is regularly the case. This is wonderful for you. This is wonderful for you as the British, because these guys are going to die in winter quarters, which is great, but also they're not doing anything else over here. So I'm going to go hard over this way, they're going to pull these guys over here, then I'm going to go hard this way, they're going to pull them back. And so when they have a death stack, that's bad. When you have a death stack, also bad. So you have to make sure that you have the space. I will never have more than 8 guys. If I've got 8 guys, I can do a big attack, and then I can move 4 guys back with my very last card of the turn. Wonderful. We're both in stockades or forts, and we're good to go. So that's the last thing that I wanted to kind of put out there and consider. There is a lot of fun to be had in this game, and there's a lot of nuance to it. But I hope this was helpful. I appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from thePlayersaid.com.